message to the billionaire class: you can't have it all.
Hello and welcome to the Evolution of Now. I am your host for today, Michael, and with me I have my beautiful assistants, Chris.
Fake news.
Morning, Chris.
Fake news.
Are you not a beautiful assistant, Chris?
I'm the prettiest assistant there is, actually. But, you know.
And we, of course, have the Tensai Badger, Aubrey.
The Tensai Badger.
The Badger. Hello.
So, how's your week been, guys? How's it been going for you?
Joyful.
Well,
I haven't been paying enough attention to politics, and therefore my life is actually better off because of it.
I've got to be honest, I'm just burning out lately. Everything that happened is so fucking stupid.
Yeah, well, we had E3 this weekend. We got the bad news about Fallout 76.
Yeah.
What's the bad news?
Online only.
Oh.
Yeah, it's apparently some kind of MMO.
Yeah, only without the massive part. There's 24 people on a server, but there's no way to lock servers, so there's no way to prevent people that you don't know from playing in your game.
Mm-hmm.
And it's PvP.
Mm-hmm.
And they can access nukes and just destroy everything.
Nukes?
So that's fun.
What?
Yeah.
That's ridiculous.
Yeah. Yep.
Stupid, ain't it?
What is this, Call of Duty or something like that? Come on. Jeez.
So, yeah,
Yeah.
the game, it's like ESO when they tried to make the Elder Scrolls series a single-player series into an MMO. It just didn't work.
Mm-hmm.
And now they're trying to do the same with Fallout.
Yeah, I mean,
Like,
mind you, they
could
managed to
be good.
they managed to retool ESO and make it, moderately successful.
Financially successful.
Financially
Apparently still
successful.
a shit game.
Yeah, it still kind of is. Like, I tried playing it again. It was better than it was when it launched, but not really. I mean, like, it
Elder Scrolls.
held my interest for, like, maybe a couple weeks. Yeah, I think only a couple weeks. And then I kind of just dropped back off.
I fell away from that game real quick. I don't know. I got it, and like within a few weeks, I was done. Maybe not even a few weeks. It might have been like a week, and I was just like, "Yeah, I don't feel like playing this."
Yeah, the first time I lasted like 5 hours, so before I was like, ugh.
Yeah.
But
yeah, I never picked it up. Fuck that shit.
And then I started playing City Skylines, and that's what I've been doing all week.
Nice.
So,
Good for you.
yeah. I've heard there's been some news going on, though.
Some of that news.
I don't know what you're talking about.
News.
Yeah, I don't know.
Go on, Chris. Your story.
I have no idea.
Chris is a big one.
I don't know what you're talking about.
There's nothing big happened this week, has it?
Yeah, exactly. Nothing really big happened this week, except for I guess there's this one guy. His name is Paul Manafort. He went to jail.
What? I literally found out about this about 10 minutes ago when Chris said, "Yeah, I'm going to talk about Paul Manafort going to jail." I'm like, "What?"
Yeah. Apparently, Paul Manafort used to head the Trump campaign when he was running for president. He was wrapped up in these investigations that have been ongoing and recently been going under Mueller, who is from the FBI. He has been looking into the presidential campaign session in 2016 for collusion with Russia in terms of the Trump campaign. And Manafort was one of the people tied up in it. Now,
the initial charge against Paul Manafort was financial.
Exactly.
Financial's going to lead us there. I'm pretty sure that if Trump's going to get caught for anything, it's going to be financial.
Yeah.
Probably money laundering.
Probably.
Most likely. But, yeah, he went to jail recently because he, according to the prosecution and I guess the judge at this point, he was in violation of his bail terms. If I can read from this Guardian article here, it says prosecutors alleged that Manafort sought to tamper with witnesses in his case by contacting them and attempting to coordinate testimony, which you kind of can't do. You kind of can't do that.
You're not allowed to do that. That's,
I mean,
we'd call it contempt of court. I believe you call it perverting the course of justice.
Probably something like that. But it's like you have conspirators that did something, and you can't allow them to coordinate a story. You wouldn't allow anyone to do that in the court of law. But it goes on. Manafort is said to have told witnesses their work together to influence European politicians on behalf of Ukraine was restricted to Europe and did not happen in the U.S. Now, one of the things that is with Manafort here is he actually used to work on behalf of the Ukrainian government in lobbying efforts. I do believe is what it was. And some of the dealings that he is in question for right now and being charged with are in relations with this Ukrainian lobbying that he did. And so that's why this becomes him trying to say, you guys, the stuff that we did about Ukraine, it's just Europeans. Don't talk about it. It's like what happens in Europe stays in Europe kind of thing. And apparently the judge did not really agree with that. So according to reporters in the room, Judge Amy Berman Jackson of the U.S. District Court for the District of Columbia said she had struggled with her decision but could not turn a blind eye to Manafort's conduct. She said, abused the trust placed in him and treated the court proceeding as just another marketing exercise. And she goes on to say, this is not middle school. I can't take away his cell phone. If I tell him not to call 56 witnesses, will he call the 57th? And so, because he kept on calling people, they decided, you know what, we're just going to put him in jail because that way we know he can't call any more witnesses. So, yeah, that's apparently what's happening in Manafort's world right now.
It's amazing, isn't it, how Trump manages to pick the most corrupt people you'll ever meet.
Best. These are the best guys you will ever find. They have the best swamp. You don't even know. You wouldn't believe.
Horrifically shady and corrupt and incompetent people was a skill.
I mean,
it's like he rolled a 1 on picking the best people.
Well, I think it's the problem is we're talking about Donald Trump here. Like you can't find someone worse on all of these counts than him, and yet it's interesting to see the people that he pulls around him and gravitates around himself are the same type of people as him, so it's really not shocking.
Birds of a feather, right?
Yeah, exactly. They do flock together. But that's that story. Did you guys have anything else to add from the week?
Well, I wanted to mention, of course, we had the Korean summit this week.
Oh, yeah, I guess that happened.
Yeah, a little tiny thing like that happened when Trump met Korea.
Meh.
To start with, what did you guys make of it?
Oh, it's great.
I'm in two minds.
It's great.
I don't know. I've mostly heard a bunch of stuff about people complaining that Trump didn't call Kim, basically that Trump was acting somewhat diplomatic for Trump, which of course means he's either like your worst enemy or he is your best buddy, because that's how Trump operates.
Best buddy? Oh, man. Yeah, I don't know much. I've been turned off of politics mostly this week, and I do know what happened. The only thing I can think of is just going off of my own sense of reasoning, which might not be the case. I feel like the only thing that I can think of that might be happening here is for Donald Trump's credit on all of this, I think the only person that could have actually gotten talks with Kim Jong-un the way that they have been is maybe Donald Trump, just because he is a psychopath And it terrifies even Kim Jong-un to the point where he's like, okay, we probably should actually deal with this guy because he may actually kill everyone. So
there is part of me that wonders if Kim recognizes that Trump's easy to manipulate and figures he'll be able to get he'll be able to exploit Trump.
Yeah. Yeah, there's that possibility too. So I don't know.
Yeah, I'll negotiate with this guy and I'll get everything I want because he's an idiot.
Yeah, that's very true. So those are the two scenarios that I can see perspiring here. And I don't know about you guys, but I don't know. There might be other reads to the situation that make more sense than what I see, at least.
I'm kind of the mind that, though, because his nuclear test site collapsed, didn't it? And I'm kind of the mind he... well, I think with John Oliver who made the analogy, it's like getting caught and your meth lab just exploded, and so the police company go, you know what? I've decided to stop cooking meth. It's like,
that's convenient.
Yeah, a bit late now.
I think that's a lot of how I feel. I feel like essentially, without the mountain collapsing, I don't think this would have happened.
Yeah,
no matter how belligerent Trump is.
His nuclear test site collapsed and he can't test his nukes anymore. So he's going, guys, I've agreed to stop testing my nukes.
Yeah.
Oh, great.
Yeah, thanks for that.
I mean, I'm sure he probably could have found other test sites too, though. But I don't know. I mean, there could be truth to all of these stories.
Nuclear fallout because it's leaking out of the mountain too, so and contaminating the nearby area.
Yeah, that's true. Well, we'll see in the future what happens through all of this, though. And but I guess I can't really say much more about this.
That's the other thing as well. Because from what I can gather, basically what happened is they met. Trump saluted randomly for no reason and did a little scraping because it's a beta. And then they both said, you know what? It'd be really nice if we had peace. Let's go home. That was it.
Yeah, well, we'll see what happens in the future here, though.
Yeah, I mean,
we'll see.
Yeah.
The other story I wanted to mention, the anniversary of the Grenfell Tower fire was recent. Mm-hmm. The investigation's, of course, ongoing. So for those who don't know, which you really should, about a year ago, 72 people died in a tower fire and a couple of hundred were made homeless because a tower in London, in Kensington, yeah, it's in London, caught fire. A massive fire broke out and engulfed the entire tower. Again, 72 people died in this fire, which is pretty horrific. And it was very quickly discovered that the cladding on the outside of the tower was not fireproof. The cladding was put there to make the tower look nicer for the rich apartments across the way, which of course prompted the discussion about what's the price of a life? You know, how much are the land values really more important than 72 people's lives?
Well, for rich people, yes.
So they tested all the cladding around the country and found a lot of towers with the same cladding on it. But more recently, it's discovered that the company who made the cladding didn't tell the councils that their stuff wasn't fireproof. So
why would they tell them that?
They had fire safety tests for a different material, changed the material, and just didn't tell anyone. So, of course, the police are not looking into whether or not that's a crime, which it really fucking should be. Some people should definitely be in prison for this. And the other note is that the relief effort has been typically shambolic. It's just an absolute mess.
Oh, yeah?
Yeah. It's been slow, and I believe people are now all right, but it took months before people, finally got new homes and...
Yeah. I think there was also other recent news about that Tommy Robinson's an asshole, and he posted something on Twitter about it, right? You posted something about that. Wasn't it Tommy Robinson? Or was it at him or something?
It was a free Tommy Robinson group, and someone posted a Grenfell Memorial candle.
I mean,
Really?
yeah, the absurdity made me laugh at first,
Memorial candle. It's one that you look at it and go, what the
yeah.
How can I explain why this is wrong?
I feel like they don't get the same reaction out of it that I did. I laughed out of absurdity and how fucked up that is, but I don't feel like these guys look at it the same way.
Fucked up. That's a word now. Trumpian levels are fucked up.
Oh, God. Yeah. I have nothing to push back with that, Michael. I really can't anymore. By the way, how's the bunker going over there in Brexit land?
How's the what?
Your bunker. Weren't you broadcasting from a bunker for a while?
Yeah, but I figured if the Theresa May government are competent enough to catch me...
Strong and stable, Michael. Strong and stable.
Yeah, so Brexit's also shambles. Just adding that in there.
Yeah.
Do you have anything else, or should we...
I don't have anything else.
I think I'm good.
I'm just done.
You think you're good?
I have to bitch about Fallout, so.
Sorry, coughing. Yeah, the main story I want to talk about this week is... and I proposed this topic a couple of weeks ago. It's not quite outdated yet, but bear in mind. So, what I want to talk about is protectionism versus globalization and the Trump tariffs. So, of course, recently, Trump proposed a 25% tariff on steel. The idea being that the US has trade deficits with most of the world, and Trump wants to counter that by restricting imports through tariffs.
We're getting killed on trade. Big league. Yeah. Big league killed on trade. So
the US imports most of its steel at the detriment of steel workers in the US. So he proposed a tariff on steel, 25%, and a tariff on aluminium. Chris, quick ground rule. It's aluminium.
Aluminum? What?
Aluminium.
Aluminum, yeah.
Aluminium. There's an I there. Shut up. Aluminium. So, aluminium.
Mm-hmm.
So.
Aluminum.
Shut up. So, what I want to talk about was the
aluminum
concept of globalization, protectionism, what they are, and how this relates to Trump's tariffs and how this is going to go. Terribly, of course. So, what is globalism? So, globalism
I believe it's a conspiracy that has to do with certain people that you can't refer to by their names or by their identity. So you use code words like the globalists, right?
Oh, yeah. The globalists.
Goddamn globalists.
Yeah, globalism or globalization. It's the globalists. They're putting stuff in the water to make the freaking frogs gay.
That's right. Frogs are gay. What are we going to do about it?
We're just going to cry.
So, globalism is trying to break down barriers between nations to make, to increase trade, free trade between countries, free trade, movement of people, all that jazz. What this means is it's easier to travel to other places. It's easier to trade with other countries. If you want to buy something, you can buy it from another country easier. That'll tend to lower costs and bring more imports into the country. And then on the opposite end of that, you've got protectionism, which is sort of isolating yourself with tariffs and trade blocks, which the idea is your country, your workers in your country, especially first world countries, are competing on the global market with globalization. The problem is a lot of other countries produce stuff a lot cheaper than your country. So your workers can't really compete, so you protect them from the global market with protectionism. It's trying to benefit your workers better.
Yeah.
What are your guys' first thoughts before we go into the pros and cons in more detail?
I feel like kind of a mixed strategy would probably be the best because
No, Badger. You have to pick one extreme and roll with it. Okay.
Exactly.
Fuck your
You can't get in the middle. There is no middle. You pick one extreme ideology and you roll with it, regardless of what happens. Brexit means Brexit.
I don't care. I don't care about Brexit. It is probably not going to affect me one whit.
I don't know about a hard or soft Brexit. All I know about is a red, white, and blue Brexit.
What?
Whatever that means. That is actually something that Theresa May actually said at one point. No joke. But
well, the 3 colors on the flags are.
Yeah.
But they don't you guys list them like in a different order?
Nope. Definitely not. She said a red, white, and blue Brexit. So, but with globalization, you did mention a few things that it's supposed to help with. It's supposed to also lower the amount of like war and violence. Although it really hasn't, like, you might be able to argue that in some ways it has lowered the amount of war that we've had, but it's really hard to really quantify or say. But it definitely hasn't stopped war from happening. But
not completely.
Yeah.
But as we'll get into, we'll get into that. The countries.
It has more to do with the imbalance of power and the reasons that people go to war.
Yeah.
It's true.
And in fact, you could argue that more globalization actually would prevent some wars.
Good.
Well, between those of comparable, I guess, I don't know, whatever. Never mind. I don't know what I'm saying.
So.
Not winning.
Ever.
So the pros and cons of globalization. And bear in mind, protectionism is just sort of the counter to globalization. So the cons of globalization will be the pros of protectionism and vice versa. So the pros, first off, and the biggest one for globalization is there's more money. If you are able to trade with faraway countries, it generates a lot of extra money.
Yeah.
Where's my thing? There it is. So you can buy cheap raw resources somewhere, manufacture them, and sell them higher costs you would otherwise. You make a lot more money. And in theory, if there's more money, then the quality of living will increase. In theory. We'll get onto that. The other part is, I don't know whether to call it a pro or a con, but
maybe
because you're now
both.
trading wealth between these countries, you find the wealth of these countries that are trading with it tends to homogenize. So, for example, in India, it's another bit I'll get onto in a bit, we exploit the population for cheap labour. But if we go to India, set up a factory, have them buy fabrics, manufacture them and sell them off, it takes wealth to India, which means they get richer and you get, in theory, poorer. So richer countries will tend to get not poorer, but they won't grow at the same rate as poorer countries.
Depends on who owns the factories and who's making the profits.
It does. Like I said, it is exploitation.
Could be like super long term. Maybe in some ways you could say that those economies are getting poorer, the bigger ones, over time. Like if the money keeps going in one direction and never in the reverse as much, then yeah, it's sort of like you were saying equals out. But
yeah, the point is the economies will homogenize eventually. It's why cheap labor is moving out of China now into other countries, India and other countries.
Yeah,
because China for a long time was the powerhouse of this cheap labor, but they're gaining economic development now.
I see it sort of
much cheap.
I see a sort of parallel though to like that kind of like equaling out of resources of those economies in a very similar way of like we know how like oppression works and everything. Like equality tends to look like oppression to those that actually are at the higher end of things to begin with, you know. And so it'll look like, in this regard, we're losing out on the deal in some way because we're losing money to these other economies. But it's more just like an equalization process. And that really doesn't work very well for the wealthy in those regards, because they in some ways lose out, and I don't know, like it just has a sort of parallel to that whole concept of equality and it looking like oppression to the oppressor, That's my read on it. Are you guys still there? Jeez.
Yeah, I'm still here.
I don't like you muted.
It's like, whoa. Did I just kill the room? Jeez.
Actually, I just started on a long rant, brilliant rant. You should have heard it about.
Sad.
But yeah, the other parallel is actually automation. If you take, if you can outsource the labor, it's similar to the effect of automation. You lose jobs in the richer country.
Yeah.
Which can be detrimental to the economy overall. Really, like I say, and it can drive wealth inequality. But that's another point I want to get to. Wealth inequality is quite a problem with globalization, because if you can get cheaper labor abroad, so you can pay some Chinese guy, $1 an hour, rather than paying an American, $9 an hour, whatever it is. It's a lot cheaper for you to make your goods, but you can sell them at the same price. And so you can make more money.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, it could even be worse than that in some times, too, because, in some occupations, there's unionization that happens, too. So, here in America, you might actually have to pay that worker $20 an hour, whereas if you just ship that job off to India or China or something like that, you might be able to spend less than $1 a day for those workers. That makes a big difference.
So it does drive wealth inequality.
Yeah.
You'll find rich people tend to get richer and poor people don't. Which is the other side of that wealth increase I mentioned. Done right, you have more wealth, and so everyone gets more money. In practice, what generally happens is that wealth inequality increases.
Yeah.
There's more wealth, and so rich people have more money, which is problematic.
Pretty much.
I'll skip that one for now. This one is what I mentioned earlier. So what you end up with is the USA, for example. It's cheaper for them to buy steel in Canada than it is for them to make steel in the USA. And so they're buying loads of steel from Canada. Of course, the US military uses a lot of steel, so they end up dependent on Canadian steel. This is the argument for Trump's national security thing. It's kind of bollocks.
Fake news.
So for Trump's recent tariffs, he said that because the military is dependent on steel, the US needs to keep a strong steel works, ignoring the fact that Canada aren't likely to cut off trade anytime soon because it's Canada, they're your allies.
Yeah, and they're probably even more reliant on us for trade at this current point in time, although that may change.
Yeah. I will say, though, Trump has made it his mission in some ways to show that ally doesn't mean a damn thing to him. He really doesn't give a shit about anyone but himself.
Yeah.
Well, that's the thing with these steel tariffs are mainly hitting the EU and Canada, and they're your strong allies, so it's not really a national security issue. But what you end up with is countries interdependent on each other. We get our rubber from Brazil, I think. We have reliance on getting that rubber from there. I think it was Brazil. Don't quote me on that. So we can't realistically invade Brazil, say, because we'd lose rubber. Because countries end up interdependent on each other, they kind of can't invade each other anymore. So Russia is a great example. About 20% of the Russian economy, I think, is gas sales to Europe. Russia cannot invade Europe because if they cut the gas sales, they stopped buying gas off Russia, their economy would collapse overnight. In the same sense, Europe can't really invade Russia because if Russia stopped selling gas, Europe would run out of gas. So that it kind of prevents a war in that way. So globalization can improve global stability. It can make your countries less likely to actually start wars with each other.
Yeah, because there's a financial reason for them not to do so. Yeah,
it puts an extra barrier up for war starting, and it removes some of the profit motive. It's like, we all know America went to war with Iraq for profit.
I don't know what you're talking about.
Yeah, it removes some of that profit motive.
Super profit.
Where's my thing?
The thing that
companies,
does
maybe,
tend
but-
to happen with globalization, though, instead, is proxy wars, where
You do get that.
You don't really fight each other directly, but you fight each other kind of indirectly through someone else.
And through trade,
Yes.
which is what trade war is.
A sort of Cold War, perhaps?
Not so much. That's a different thing. Proxy wars were common in the Cold War, though. Vietnam was a proxy war. The Korean War was a proxy war, as we mentioned the other week.
Afghanistan was too, if I remember correctly, as well.
Yeah, there was an Afghanistan proxy war with Russia, I believe.
Yeah.
With the US and Russia.
Which, by the way, is one of the reasons, we have to probably do a story or a show on that topic just on its own. Just remembering it, like Osama bin Laden was trained by the United States to fight the Russian forces there. I believe is what it was. He was
so the US and Saudi Arabia promoted radical Islam in Afghanistan to try and destabilize the Russian hold on it. And that's why you ended up with it being such a shit show. Yeah.
And then, unbeknownst to us, he turned around and was like, yeah, you know what? Screw America. Because, they're bastards. Which is, in a lot of ways, probably true. But, yeah.
Well, think about it. Once they kicked out the Russians, they had to have someone else to fight, didn't they?
Yeah, probably. And
especially with fundamentalist groups that are militant in nature, you have to have an enemy to be fighting against. Otherwise, where'd all your recruits go? You already won. They went home.
Yeah.
But that was one of the big reasons why Afghanistan ended up with loads of radical Islamic groups, because America propagated it with the help of Saudi Arabia.
Yeah.
To destabilize the Russian hold on it. And then was shocked when there's loads of radical Islam that had nothing to do with the country. Wow.
I kind of wonder if 9/11 happened in response to that whole thing. Wonder.
Yeah, partially anyway.
Yeah.
Probably in part.
In part, yeah. It's of course going to be more complicated than
Yeah,
that.
there's more nuance to it, but eventually we have to probably make a topic of it. But
probably do.
Yeah.
But that's one of the other sides of globalization, is that you end up with smaller countries sometimes getting shafted, which is the next point I wanted to mention. Exploitation, both of countries and people. So like I said, you can go to a country that doesn't have a great human rights and basically enslave them to produce your stuff. And this is one of the ways, like I mentioned, you get stuff cheap and that's great. One of the ways you do that is through what amounts to slavery. China was famous for it because they didn't have great human rights, and so they were happy to just have, child laborers and slaves working in your factories.
Yeah.
And of course, you can exploit whole countries. The Americans are famous for it with banana republics and.
Yeah, which should be another topic that we are going to eventually get into as well.
Banana republics, where they would. I don't know too much about it, but they basically installed dictators to have overthrow democracies, install dictators in Latin American countries so they get cheaper bananas.
Yeah.
Which is where the name Banana Republic comes from.
If I remember correctly as well, they would sell the rights to certain train tracks to these banana republics, and if the government of those countries did anything to try and curtail that for the interests of their own people, that's when the United States government would step in and depose that dictator or that government and instate a new one. And sometimes, even into the modern era, that hasn't always been dictatorships that have been overthrown. It has actually been democratically elected officials a few times as well. So,
well, I mean, that's literally the story of what happened with Iran. Yeah, we were upset. They decided that they were going to keep the profits for the oil for themselves and not let our companies just, come in and take it. So we overthrew their democratically elected government and installed was it the Shah?
To go on a slight tangent, I have a lot of conversations with people about Russia and their fuckery recently, and they always say America are worse, and it's a red herring, but it's a very true one.
Yeah, I don't think a lot of times
it's very difficult to defend America.
Oh yeah,
When you say, well, Russians are screwing around with elections, and you go, well, America, and you're like, Russians are screwing with American elections, and this is really bad. You're like, yes, it is really bad.
Yeah, and in fact, the very election that we're accusing them of screwing with, one of the candidates in that election even put in a book, wishing that we had screwed with the Palestinian elections, saying, "Oh, I wish we'd fix the election." Wait, you put that in a book, and then you claim you support democracy? Only if it's Americans, I guess.
Yeah, it's very difficult to.
Yeah.
I mean, it is a red herring, and screwing with any election is bad. So we should condemn Russia for it. But it's very difficult to say, "Oh, it's so bad," and then for America to be like, "How dare you screw with democratically elected leaders?"
Yeah, I mean the point is,
well, we screw with our own elections all the time.
Yeah,
but like primary system.
Yeah, the thing is, it's not okay for either side to do it. One side doing it doesn't justify the other side doing it.
Obviously.
It's like, I mean, one guy commits murder. That doesn't
boggles my mind that we have to point out that just because someone did a bad thing doesn't mean that it's suddenly okay for everyone to do it.
Exactly. But that's sort of the read that I get from Donald Trump. That's what he wants, though. He's like, well, they do it bad that way too, so that's okay that we do it bad, or so we did it bad, so it's okay that they did it bad.
When Trump says it's bad, he's usually lying.
Yeah, I mean,
and Trump is Fox News. I mean, always take a look at what Fox News has said in the past, because we know he's obsessed with their channel. Yeah, I mean, Fox News says stuff that basically is right along with the stuff Trump says. All the dictators that Trump's praised in his presidency, they're all dictators that have been praised on Fox News at some point in time, with the exception of Kim Jong-un.
And what about the alt-left who came, as you say, charging at the alt-right?
Charging?
Like I say, half the time when Trump accuses someone of a bad thing, it's just false. Like he's accusing Canada of exploiting the US somehow. But then, when something bad actually happens, he doesn't care.
Yeah.
What did he call Kim? He called Kim Jong-un something recently, and it's like, he's a murderous dictator, right?
And he
was
likes
going
that.
on about how he's a great guy or something like that. I don't know.
He likes that quality about him. Let's be honest. Donald Trump, if he was able to do the things that Kim Jong-un is able to do, he would be in heaven, I think, in some ways. This guy, I think in some ways he fawns over the dictatorial power that he has over his country, and he wishes he had that kind of power. I mean, I
think for Trump, it isn't necessarily that he wants to be a dictator. It's just he wants to do whatever he wants. He likes
power.
Yeah, he wants divine right. I mean, where it's not every king who ruled with the whole divine right, whatever, was a bad king. But they all claimed they had this absolute power to rule and do whatever the fuck they wanted, and that the law didn't apply to them. Well, for some of them, it came back and bit them in the ass. If you were French, doubly so. But
yeah, that kind of exploitation of smaller countries.
Yeah,
is one of the cons of globalization.
Yes,
To pull it back into the topic. So yeah, it doesn't necessarily spread democracy. Sometimes it goes the other way.
Great advantage of globalization. I mean, we all know that he has his ties made in China or whatever. And like his daughter also has her stuff made in like all these countries that have problems with their laborers being exploited.
Yeah, so, it's great. So that great irony of "Make America Great Again" hat made in China.
Yeah.
I know that there was something not that long ago, a few months ago at the most, like where he did some kind of wheeling and dealing with China, and he got his daughter some like trademark patents over in China for whatever the deal was. I can't remember what it was at this point.
They made a deal, and then Ivanka got some approval from the Chinese, and it was like, did he just use the power of the president to benefit his daughter?
Yep.
Yes.
Of course he did.
Yes, yeah. And of course you're not going to impeach him for that because...
Why would we do that?
Wildly unethical.
I don't know what you're talking about, Michael. I see nothing unethical that's going on right now in this country.
So one of the other ones I wanted to mention, just to pull it back on topic, is if you're working in individual countries and country A researches a technology, let's say a cure for some disease, if country B wants that, they have to research it themselves separately. Cuba famously invented, I think it was a lung cancer vaccine. Yep. But because Cuba wasn't trading with anyone, no one else got it. And everyone else had to research it separately. If you have a globalized system where countries are trading with each other, if one country researches something like this, everyone else gets it already. So you get a faster technological progress.
They can.
Where labs are able to coordinate and countries can not coordinate the research, but compete with each other for the same technology.
Yeah.
So you do get faster technological progress.
Well, and in medicine, it's extremely important, particularly. Because, I mean, like, look at that lung cancer vaccine. That's something that literally was kind of unheard of.
Yeah. I know.
We're like, wait, what?
Millions yeah. Probably millions of lives, that. But that's also a weird downside of it, because something I didn't think about, but I was watching a video about it, one of the videos on Link. If you have, and you mentioned this once, Badger, actually, if you have isolated groups, they don't tend to it's very difficult for a disease to hit them, because they're isolated. There's nowhere to get the disease from. Whereas if you have a globalized system, if Ebola starts in Africa, say, it's not that hard for it to get to America. It just needs to hop on a plane.
Yeah, that's why that's why epidemics are so much more dangerous now than they used to be.
Yeah, and that's one of the downsides. Epidemics are more able to spread much further because people are traveling around and people are carrying diseases all over the place. So that's another downside of it. So on the medical front, you do get better technology, but the epidemics are easy to spread. Africa was probably better off because we developed treatments for Ebola and went to Africa I know better off in this one regard, not better off in general, because Africa's kind of...
Yeah,
I heard that sneaking out. I suddenly realised what I'd said, and I was like, yeah, no, it wasn't. But in this one regard, we researched treatments for Ebola and went to Africa out of fear of our own countries, but still, and tried to curtail it at the source.
But mind you, Ebola has been a problem in Africa for, well over 100 years?
I mean, we don't care until it threatens us.
Exactly. But it was only when all of a sudden it was leaving Africa that we cared enough to actually search for a cure. But
it's worth mentioning because even that, consequentially, doing something is better than doing nothing. So we only care when it can affect us, but at least it's not nothing. And in general, though, Africa's been absolutely fucked by colonialism because, it's just a mess. For various reasons. We could probably do a whole video about that. A whole topic on that. And finally, the last one I wanted to mention, the last pro or con before we move on to the tariffs, is the climate. So, of course, if you're transporting your stuff all over the globe by plane, ship, and lorry, the environment gets kind of fucked. of course, climate change is happening, and all that extra carbon being emitted does exacerbate climate change, and of course, deforestation for farmland to sell stuff abroad.
By the way, I just wanted to mention, you said lorry. Us Americans don't use lorry. We usually say truck, I think, right?
It's a lorry. It's a lorry. It's not lorry, it's lorry. Okay? Over there.
It's a truck.
Lorry.
It's a truck.
Semi-truck usually.
Semi-truck, yeah.
Why
Truck.
semi?
Tractor trailer
I don't
in some
know.
ways, too. A lot of people call them tractor
tractor
trailers.
Tractor? A tractor?
Yeah.
It's not a tractor. You
I
put it
don't
on a
know why
field.
either. That one never made any sense to me.
Yeah,
Yeah, but semi. I mean, lorries, articulated lorries, are the really big ones.
the trucks.
They're lorries.
They're trucks.
Kill
Okay.
yourself.
Okay, guys.
Your lorry is our
Calm
truck,
down.
okay? You just calm down.
Whatever.
Everyone calm down.
You're just wrong on your language.
Whatever.
But yeah, this
We
is
just made it
the other
better.
big problem of it. Climate change is also another big problem of it. And we have this situation where the people in richer countries, well, the Earth cannot support 7 billion cars. It just can't. But the people who have cars now feel entitled to them. So we have this problem where the first world are living quite a far more luxurious life than the Earth can handle, and the poorer countries aren't, and they want to get up to the same standard, but the Earth simply can't support that. One of the difficult realities of climate change is probably going to be that issue of the Earth simply can't sustain everyone having this level of living. Make of that what you will.
And that's why it sort of becomes more important for us to find better alternatives, like electric cars or renewable energy.
I think a more robust public transportation system and better zoning in our cities would actually be more effective than those.
Electric long-range transport systems would be really helpful.
That
as well.
too, yes.
Electric
But like, I
train-
mean, as far as like everybody having their own car and stuff, I mean, here in the United States, unless you live in a huge city, you're going to struggle getting around without a car.
Mhm.
And that's one of the major problems that we need to
like I
address.
say, people forget about lorries, trucks, moving goods from city to city, and they're quite a large chunk of the CO2 production. If you could have electric trains or even electric lorries, that would cut down on emissions quite a lot, assuming the power grid.
Depending on where you get your
yeah,
electricity from.
assuming the power grid will cut down on emissions.
But,
Yeah, but long-range transport is a difficult one. It produces a lot of carbon and it wrecks the environment.
Yeah. Even our ships and stuff, you know, they're usually running on something like that as well, right? So I mean,
Yeah.
They use diesel.
And the problem with ships, of course, is that when pollution gets into the water, it tends to travel quite a long way. So you get damage over a very wide area.
yeah.
It's one of the reasons transporting oil by ship is actually one of the most damaging to the environment. Because you don't get leaks very often. When you do, it damages like an entire coastline.
Yeah, the BP oil spill that we had years
Yeah.
ago. Jeez.
Valdez.
It fucked
Exxon
like,
Valdez. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah,
That
it fucked like the
destroyed
entire
the
coast.
Alaskan coastline.
And that's another Arctic drilling too. You know, if we like Arctic drill and something goes wrong, now we have like billions of tons of oil in the Arctic
in a remote
frozen
location
waters.
we can't get to. Yeah.
Yeah, it's too cold up there for us to actually deal with that in any meaningful way. We can't really
Well, and
contain it in those
there
frozen
isn't
waters.
even. Yeah, there isn't even like the proper response teams aren't even there.
Yeah,
There-
that's what I mean. The infrastructure's not there
You know?
to deal with it.
Yeah,
One of the reasons why drilling in the
Um,
Arctic is just a really stupid idea that's just asking for trouble.
Yeah, which was why I was so pissed when Obama kept opening and reopening the Arctic to drilling.
Yeah.
He kept changing his mind about it, and it's just like, no, just close it and leave it closed. Stop
Yeah.
reopening it.
pretty
I'd
much.
sooner frack than drill in the Arctic. It's just so bad. It's so bad. If you get a leak, it will last for years because there's just no way of dealing with it.
Yeah. Fracking's really, really bad though too.
So those are sort of the pros and cons.
Oil in
of,
general is really bad.
yeah, that's true.
Yeah, true. Coal is worse, to be honest.
I mean,
Coal-
like, there's been like oil spills in like rivers and even just in fields. And yeah, you can't do anything with it. And it's like really difficult to clean. Like there was a diesel pipeline burst in northern Iowa in the middle of a farmer's field. He didn't even know the pipeline was there because it was there when he bought the farm. His fields are going to be barren until the diesel finally leaves the soil.
Which takes
you can't grow anything in there. Yeah. He has worthless land now.
Yeah, it's an absolute fucking mess. Coal is a really bad one as well for the environment. Not inert coal. You can.
Yeah.
But what about clean coal? Clean coal is the best. It's really clean and it's great. It's big.
When you take coal and you get like a soap and sponge and you clean it.
Oh
Exactly.
yeah. That'll work.
You just wash it a little bit and it's clean. I mean, that's how it works. I mean, come on.
Clean coal.
Clean coal.
It's not clean at all. It's terrible. It's fucking awful stuff. But when you burn it, it releases so much shit into the air. It's more radioactive than a nuclear power plant. A lot of people don't know that. A lot of people don't know that. Sorry, I made a Trump quote there by accident.
Okay.
But yeah, you get more radiation from living near a coal plant than you do a nuclear plant. Because it's in the air. It just releases all this radioactive shit into the air.
Yeah, well, and that actually does make sense because no one's really trying to capture the radiation at a coal plant.
Mm-hmm.
Whereas at the nuclear plant, they've got all kinds of safety mexims and stuff in there to capture the radiation.
There's the first containment. There's the radiation shield on the nuclear reactor itself. There's a containment structure, and then there's extra barriers of containment in the wider structure.
Yeah.
And it's direct radiation as well. It's very quickly, irradiation is being hit by radiation itself, alpha, beta, gamma radiation. Contamination is ingesting radioactive substances. So if you swallow americium, you're contaminated, and that's more what coal does. It's not that radiation released specifically, it releases radioactive elements which are then radioactive. So it releases radioactive dust into the air, you breathe it in, and that damages your lungs. Coal's really bad.
Yeah. I think for us laymen out here that actually have no idea what you just said, yeah, it's radiation is tough. You understand that,
Coal is terrible. Coal is just terrible.
I understood. I think you're just dumb, Chris.
Wow.
Ouch.
Jesus, man. That's pretty messed up. What the hell? What a jerk.
What? Okay, fine. I blame the root beer.
No.
What are you, drunk on root beer or something? What is this?
I am drunk on root beer. That's what I'm.
So yeah, those are kind of the pros and cons of globalization.
Yeah.
So to recap, we've got
a lot of us out here don't understand
increases.
radiation and all that. So just saying.
Yeah, it's poorly understood.
Yeah.
Wealth increases. Yeah, homogenization of economies. The climate is fucked, but small countries get exploited. Does help global stability. It helps technology. Doesn't help with diseases, find it easy to propagate, and increased wealth inequality. What I want to talk about next, though, was specifically Trump's tariffs on the EU and Canada and China.
China. Yeah.
China. That wasn't us being stupid. Trump said that once, and it was amazing. He has a weird way of saying China with a Y.
China. Yeah.
China with a Y. China.
Yeah.
So, what are Trump's tariffs? Like I mentioned at the start, Trump has proposed a 25% tax on steel imports and a 10% tax on aluminium imports. So the aim of this is to protect steel workers and presumably aluminium workers. And actually it does. Steel workers should see a increase in employment and job security. We might see more steel workers, might even more steelwork businesses popping up, which is great. There's about 175,000 steelwork jobs. That's quite a lot of jobs to save. The problem is, all your steel and aluminium is now more expensive. And there's, how much was it? I think there's about 17 million jobs dependent on steel. And all of those are at risk. So you've got 175,000 that benefited and a couple of million that are, not benefited. So you might see businesses close down because of this. You might see, or at least layoffs being made.
I think a big part of that would be that the goods that are made by that aluminum and aluminium and steel, the price is going to be put onto the consumer, and so the consumer is and so those consumer goods
less demand on the consumer side because people just can't afford that.
Yeah,
I mean, we could barely afford the prices there were before the tariffs.
Exactly, and
it affects consumers like anything canned.
Yeah, I just wanted to try and say though, consumers, will buy less, and when they buy less, there's less demand for those goods, and then when there's less demand, they fire people.
Yeah, that's how it works.
Exactly. That's all I was trying to say.
Well, you probably see people buying more frozen produce as opposed to canned, and I have no problem with that because canned peas are nasty, and so are canned green beans. Frozen is way better.
But there's things like cars.
But beyond that.
And very few people seem to mention it, but isn't the US trying to fix its infrastructure? You don't need steel for that, do you?
That was
Fake news.
Theory, but, I think they'll just use plastic.
Here's another one, though, that actually might hit home for a lot of people out there. Beer might actually go up in price. Because,
any kind of beers.
Yeah, I mean, how do you get your beer usually? A lot of people drink...
Bottle?
There's glass bottles, yes. But a lot of people buy aluminium beer cans. And so that could mean that your beer is going to actually be a little bit more expensive from now on because of this tariff.
Mm-hmm.
You know what? If it pushes people to buying more glass bottles instead of aluminum cans or aluminium cans or whatever the fuck
the problem still, though, is those glass bottles. I prefer glass, too, myself. Absolutely. Like, when I used to get ciders all the time, I would always prefer glass bottles over anything else. But
the taste is actually different.
Yeah.
It tastes better in glass.
Yeah. But the problem is it's more expensive for a lot of people. So,
say that
it's still going to be more expensive, I think, for those glasses than it will be. Yeah. I think. Maybe I'm wrong.
As always, it hits the poorest.
Yeah, I know. And
so, what was I about to say?
I don't know.
Tariffs.
Chris? Okay, good. I thought we lost you there.
I'm here. Yeah.
Yeah. Now, the other problem here is, I was about to mention infrastructure as well. You need steel for infrastructure, so now your infrastructure is also more expensive. It's a good thing you don't need to do any big infrastructure repairs soon, isn't it?
Also, it's a very good thing we're not bombing the hell out of other countries with bombs that are wrapped in steel and aluminum.
Yeah, I actually read this because the Department of Defense are running out of steel for their bombs, and they've been doing this for a while. And now Trump's made all the steel more expensive, and they're just like, for fuck's sake.
So, you know what this means? This means we need to appropriate more money for the military.
Yeah, obviously. So, the knock-on effects are pretty wide-reaching. The other problem is, though, if someone targets you with a trade tariff, you can't not react.
Of course.
So, of course, the world's biggest economies that have been targeted, like EU and China, are having to react to this. And the EU... balls, I've lost the thing now. The EU is reacting with its own tariffs. It's like, we're going to have our own tariffs with blackjack and hookers.
It's going to be big league. It's going to be great.
Yeah. So what the EU plans to do is to target American... They've been quite clever about it, actually. They're targeting the main exports of swing states. So bourbon from Kentucky and beer and
soy, corn.
Yeah, pork and soy. Pork for I think was Iowa, and soy and corn as well.
Corn is also Iowa. Soy is also Iowa.
Yeah. So
I think we're actually one of the largest soy producers in the nation too.
Oh,
one of. I don't think we're the top one, but yeah, we're close.
But I'm not sure how China's reacting. I was trying to find the story. Now I had an article up on it. I can't find it now. I'll link it in the thing.
Probably also beef and dairy products.
I know dairy products. I don't know about beef.
Okay, yeah. Well, I don't think you guys
But,
import much
yeah, the
beef from
EU
us in the first place anyway.
Essentially, the EU produced a 10-page report of everything they're thinking of taxing, and then they picked some and taxed them. And this leads to what we call a trade war, where, okay, so the US has implemented tariffs. The US got to implement counter tariffs too, because it's like being attacked militarily. You can't not respond. You have to do something.
Tit for tat, as some might say.
Yeah. So, of course, then Trump goes, oh, well, I'm not having that. I'm going to do this. And then, of course, the EU is going to have to do something else to react to that.
Yeah, the thing is, there's no way in any of this that America comes out on top, because what we're basically doing right now is the U.S. versus the world. So the world can just all band together and just
And
completely...
they are. Canada and Mexico have
Canada,
signed a trade
Mexico,
deal.
the EU, China. I mean, it's like...
Yeah, Canada and Mexico have signed a new trade deal, I believe, recently.
Yeah.
And they're looking at improving trade with the EU. I believe that was after Trump walked out of the G7, actually.
Yeah, because Trump has the diplomacy of a 5-year-old child throwing a temper tantrum.
Uh-huh.
Pretty much.
So, yeah, he's decided he wants to take on the world in a trade war, and he's going to lose.
Yeah.
I know that like a lot of people like to go on and on about how America's great, and everybody relies on us. The reality is no, they don't.
Yeah, America, for the most part, has a quite good standard of living, and you don't get that without being dependent on other countries.
Yeah, it's actually kind of the other way around. We're dependent on everybody else.
Yeah, we built the largest economy in the early 1900s and everything. After World War II, we built the largest economy in the world, and we're still living off of the bounty of that. And it's just that the rest of the world is starting to come.
Well, the main thing is the rest of the world was kind of devastated by World War II.
Yeah, yeah,
So
that was part of
just
it.
starting to get their shit back together. They're like, hey, we're doing okay now.
Yeah.
You know?
They're starting to catch up now, and we've been living high on the hog for a long time, and now our place in the world is starting to wane a bit.
I shouldn't say the rest of the world wasn't entirely devastated by World War II. The parts that weren't were devastated by colonialism. So there's that.
Yeah, the I guess the industrialized nations were really deeply destroyed in a lot of ways.
Not just
by
destroyed in general.
World War II. Yeah.
Britain and France were in debt to America because we borrowed a lot of American stuff.
Yeah, that's part of it too. But the industrialized nations were the ones that were hit
60s.
hard by those wars, and the rest of the world was just, not because they weren't industrialized yet, and they were already just way behind.
Yeah, well, China or Japan was kind of went through Southeast Asia, kind of just destroying everything in their path and claiming colonies for themselves.
Yeah.
There's a reason why the Chinese and Koreans both hate the Japanese. We don't like to talk about it. In fact, those reasons aren't even mentioned in any of our history textbooks. In fact, we don't really even talk about what Japan did to Southeast Asia.
Yeah,
I haven't learned about this years ago, that the Japanese imperialism.
Yeah. We only barely touched on it when we talked about Korea the other week. The reason why we split North and South Korea like we did was because of the Japanese occupation from World War II.
The Japanese took Korean women as sex slaves.
Yeah.
During World War II. So that's another large part of the reason for why the Koreans really fucking hate the Japanese.
Yeah.
They were not treated well by them.
Yeah, the Japanese were pretty messed up.
Yeah. Imperialism does a mindfuck on you.
Yeah. It's just that we have our own imperialist scheme over here now.
Yeah.
But
and part of imperialism is believing that you are superior in some way, shape, or form to the other people. Because otherwise you wouldn't naturally be on top. Yeah.
And you wouldn't keep them subservient like we do to some of our, imperialist holdings, Yeah.
And in the U.S. it tends, and in the U.K., the British Empire, it tends to take the form of racism. We have certain ways of making sure that those below us stay below us. Well, in Japanese imperialism, they literally believed that they were the children of the gods, and that everyone else were like just animals.
Aye.
You know, so I mean, it was very religious, and it was very similar to kind of Hitler's, stuff about the superior Aryan race and all that. So I mean, somehow they still managed to get along with each other despite believing the other people were like animals. But hey, I suppose when you need allies.
Pretty much.
Yeah.
Uh-huh. So yeah, we end up with a bunch of trade wars going on.
Yeah.
That the US isn't going to do well with. And I think they're being very clever in targeting swing state exports. Because
of course.
Basically, next harvest, a bunch of farmers in swing states are going to look at their harvest and go, I can't sell things to other countries anymore, or it's more expensive to. And with any luck...
Well, mind you, that's not actually how it works with farmers. We just take it, or they just take it to basically where they sell it, and then they just have to take the price. And then from the silo, they're the ones who then distribute it out elsewhere.
Whatever, Badger. I'm not a farmer.
Yeah, I know. The point is it's going to be a much lower amount that they're going to get paid for it. And so as a result, they're going to find themselves likely not able to make ends meet.
Uh-huh. And within a look, they'll be able to connect the dots and realize it's Trump that did that.
Mm-hmm. Well, maybe.
Yeah, I know.
Thanks to Bill Maher, they might blame the liberals and be like, it's because they wished for a recession.
Yeah, I'm... The stupidity of people never ceases to amaze me.
Yeah.
We have this weird feedback loop over here where the right are convinced that immigrants are the cause of our poor economy. So they keep voting the right wing, who says they'll deal with the immigrant problem. And of course, the right wing are causing further economic problems. So you get this weird, awesome little feedback cycle where the right wing causes more economic damage. So voters blame immigrants, vote in the right wing, who cause more economic damage. And then all the votes are like, oh, bloody liberals, bloody immigrants.
It's similar here in some ways.
Literally punching yourself in the face and going, bloody immigrants, I should punch myself in the face again.
Yeah, I mean, it's similar here in some ways, where the Democrats hold power for a little while, and the right wing says, oh, they didn't clean up fast enough, so therefore they're ruining everything. And then we vote the Republicans in, and then they destroy everything.
And blame the Democrats.
And then they blame the Democrats. Yeah, and then eventually the Democrats come back into power, and then they don't clean up fast enough again. It's like, you see that they're still not cleaning up fast enough. Vote for us in, and then we vote them in, and it's just
Bush. That made me laugh in Romney's election. Bush destroyed the economy completely and utterly.
Yeah.
Uh-huh.
And then in the 2012 election, they blamed the Democrats for cleaning up too slow.
Exactly.
Yeah. Well, and
vote for us. We'll clean. We'll. The other side aren't cleaning up our mess fast enough.
Yeah,
we'll prove
make an even bigger mess.
Exactly.
Yeah, but shit, I lost it. Oh, right. So like, because I saw a little bit of that Sarah Huckabee Sanders going on about with the kids, separating the kids from the parents and stuff, and claiming they were just following the law, which they're not. They're doing it on purpose this way. But the thing that really caught my attention was that she basically blamed the Democrats, because she said, well, the president asked for the Democrats to put forward a bill or something to change the law so that, we don't have to take the kids away from their parents. And I was just sitting there, I was just like, they're a minority in both the House and the Senate. Why would you ask the Democrats to pass a law?
Yeah.
They literally can't.
Well, they always have to.
So weird.
They have to push that narrative. That's their whole narrative. But
but so that's kind of the thing though, because somehow they hold the House, the Senate, and the presidency. They still can't get fucking single thing done, and then they blame the Democrats.
They hold the entire government. They can't do anything. They're completely incompetent, and they blame the Democrat. It's
like
and people believe them.
It's the dog
like
that caught the bus. You know, it's the dog that caught the bus. You know.
Yeah,
I had a great conversation with a Tory the other day who was like, "Well, this NHS is absolutely fucked," and I'm like, "Yeah, whoever's in charge of the healthcare system is really making a bloody mess of it. We should vote for the Tories." Oh. Rant.
Yeah.
That's all right.
But yes, with any luck, the Trump people will realise that Trump is fucking them over, and with any luck,
I think it's more likely that they just won't show up to vote, rather
which is
than
fine.
actually voting for the
as long
other
as they don't vote for Trump next time.
Yeah. Because I mean, it's
Or whoever's Republican happens to be, because Trump might get primaried.
yeah. Because I mean, it's that I think is much more likely, and I say that as someone who's kind of in the middle of Trump country here. There's a hell of a lot of people here who equate voting for a Democrat with literally voting for Satan.
Wow.
I wish I was joking.
Oh man.
But there are a lot of really tribally religious Republicans out here. They're not the majority, but there's a hell of a lot of them, and unfortunately they feel it's their civic duty to vote.
Yeah.
So most of them turn up to vote all the time.
And that should be
every single election.
That should be a message to us left-leaning people out there. They are definitely going to be voting because this matters to them. This should matter to you guys too, guys. Please vote. Yeah. Please vote when you can.
I'm worried about this in November. I have a really bad feeling that Steve King is going to get reelected. Not because JD's, not good enough or whatever, but because, I mean, when I compare the Democrats' turnout numbers in the primary to the Republican primary turnout numbers in this district, there were 10,000, it was about 9,000 more Republicans that turned out to vote than there were Democrats. And Steve King won his primary race with 75% of the Republican vote.
Wow. I know our
that
current
concerns me because those people that turned out, those are the people that turned out every time. And yeah.
Yeah. Our current senator here, though, Robert Menendez, he also run his primary. And he is actually not that great. He's definitely on the establishment Democrat side of things. And so he did not get primaried this time around, unfortunately. So he's probably going to get put right back into office. But yeah, he's not great.
Yeah. So, I mean, well, and I know this is a different topic from the protectionism versus globalism topic, but it's just kind of, I guess, a reminder that, I mean, sometimes people are not rational in their voting choices.
Yeah, it's tangentially
sometimes
related.
back to the stupid.
Yeah, tangentially related.
Yeah.
So I mean, that's the problem with democracy.
Yeah.
It's not a perfect system.
It's not easy. And if you don't pay attention, that's actually ideal for those that want to rig the system and wreck everything for you. They want you to not pay attention. They want you to not vote because that makes it easier for them to stay in power and to garner all of the power and do all the things that they want to do for themselves and their friends. And so,
in northwestern Iowa, that is one of the districts. Is probably the district that faces the most amount of people leaving the district, like young people leaving the district, too. So you're left with a much older population, kind of dominating the votes, because I mean, people go to Iowa State University, which is in the district, and then they leave. They go elsewhere, and they don't go back to the 4th district. Because there's no jobs in the 4th district, unless you want to be a farmer. I mean, there's like Sioux City and stuff like that, but I mean, it's not like, I mean, if there's no place to work, even though you may want to live where you grew up, you just can't. So, I mean, that's one of the problems with rural Iowa is we're literally, and rural United States, is we're literally bleeding populations. They're all leaving to go try to find jobs. And part of the problem with that is then that leaves usually the least educated and the
old people,
typically the older people, behind to represent the area. So those who did stay and do find jobs find themselves as part of the minority and just completely ignored, which is a problem in democracy. Period. Is if you're ever in the minority, is that you're always going to feel ignored. But that's just part of democracy. I don't know. There's problems with democracy. It's not a perfect system, but yeah. Anyway.
Yeah, I guess in closing for this, at least, these tariffs might actually, in some ways, in the short term, be good for Trump. In the very short term, I don't know, but in the long term, they usually aren't a good thing.
Good in the sense that it looks like he's doing something. So people might say, "Oh, yes, Trump is doing something."
May also help create a few more jobs in one industry, and then
I should also add that a lot of Trump supporters also belong to that group of right-wing Americans, usually right-wing Christians, but not always, who love to feel persecuted. They have a persecution complex. So, the idea that they're being targeted, by these nefarious other countries and stuff might themselves be like, Trump must be doing something right.
Yeah.
I don't know. It's really weird how they think sometimes. But
yeah, what I was saying though is like these tariffs might actually create some jobs in the short term, but like we have been saying here, in the long term, jobs will be lost probably overall.
Yeah.
And so
I already know people who've lost their jobs because of Trump policies. I mean, I had a friend who worked at a wind turbine factory as a technician there. He even went to school to become a wind turbine technician. And it's a highly specialized field, and you have to really know what you're doing.
Yeah.
But he lost his job because they had to downsize when Trump, decided to basically attack the green industry.
That's terrible.
So, yeah. So he's out of work right now.
Well, that sucks. But,
Yeah, it's absolutely messy. Trump's policies are... My worry is a lot of the Trump's policies, they're going to have their worst effects in a couple of years when he's out of office and someone else is taking the thing. And so...
theoretically.
That's sort of the cycle,
I'm not entirely certain he's not going to get reelected.
That's sort of the cycle, though, right?
Me neither.
This is why we keep going back and forth between Republicans and Democrats.
Yeah,
the Republicans wreck everything, and then it doesn't get felt sometimes until the Democrat is in office, and then everyone's like, how dare this happen? Screw you, Obama, all this shit happened. No, this was Bush era stuff that's actually now coming to fruition because of the policies that were put in place back then. And
the Tories do a similar thing. They will implement policies that have short-term gains. And look, we're doing great. And then 4 years down the line, we have a new Prime Minister in office. Labour's now in office, and everything's... and, of course, now all the policies are starting to fall apart because we've sacrificed our long-term stability.
Yeah. And there's also, the unemployment rate here in America. Everyone gave Obama shit every single year about the unemployment numbers, and they were consistently going down every single year. And they went down under Trump too, because they were consistently going down. And it was Obama-era policies that did that. And yet, who gets the credit for that? Donald Trump got the credit for it in a lot of people's eyes. And it's just so absurd. Yeah. It wasn't him that did that. It was Obama's policies. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and
Growth Trend actually followed what Obama said.
Those jobs, though, that most of those people were actually taking were lower paying jobs than what they'd originally been laid off from. So it's not necessarily that, like a positive thing for the economy because it still showed that we hadn't actually truly recovered.
Yeah, we definitely haven't. I'm not going to try and lie on that.
Yeah.
No.
So, I mean, I don't think Obama's policies were anywhere near as great as they could have been.
But I'm just trying to say, though, his policies are what Trump is getting credit for now, which it shouldn't be the case. It wasn't him that got that. It wasn't him that did it.
Yeah, I know. And anybody with half a brain cell knows that.
Yeah, but Trump voters don't have half a brain cell.
Yeah,
there are a lot of people that don't follow it, that don't know.
I am not sure it really matters whether or not they have half a brain cell because Obama bad, Trump good.
Their brain's just a bunch of mitochondria, like, wee.
But, this is why I think that politically wise, we need to stop thinking like short-term kick out the Republicans, like anyone other than a Republican. We need to start thinking long-term and building the party sustainably in such a way that, we're not going to immediately find ourselves like completely hamstringed once Democrats do get back into office.
Yeah.
And that means putting the right Democrats in office. So not just any Democrat will do.
Yeah. And that means primary elections become extremely important. So if you guys only vote in the general elections, you got to start voting in the primaries too. Yeah, because that's really where the change can happen.
If you want to actually pick from a decent range of candidates, you got to vote in the primaries.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I mean, and it's because if you don't vote in the primary, you're literally going to be left with whoever won the primary, and then you just have to choose who to vote for. Oh, do I vote for the party pick, or do I just kind of go off on my own? And I mean, there is a major problem right now in the Democratic Party with them rigging primaries.
And they're trying to do it again.
I understand why people give up and leave the Democratic Party. I feel like that half the time myself.
Yeah.
That's frustrating.
Yeah, absolutely.
And you know that you're not even really being allowed to choose who wins the primary because they're actively going against, trying to rig the primary, before it even starts.
Yeah, it was pretty blatant. I believe
they're trying to do it the next one as well.
Yeah, it was pretty blatant and obvious throughout the 2016 election cycle what happened in the primary season with.
It's been blatant and obvious throughout 2018 too for anyone who's bothering to pay attention.
Yeah, and but yeah, it's still important. Like even though Bernie Sanders in the 2016 primary season lost. He actually only barely lost, which is pretty phenomenally amazing. Like
he only barely lost in terms of the popular primary vote, which is not the entirety of the primary vote. Once you actually get to the superdelegates, he lost in a landslide.
Well, the thing with the superdelegates, it's a misnomer, I think, because like the superdelegates do not vote until the convention. And they weren't supposed to throw their hat into the race until that time, the superdelegates. Yeah,
they aren't supposed to, but they are.
Yeah,
that's
but that was the problem.
Even Fox News, there was one of the states, I can't remember which one, Bernie won by 60-40. And so the final delegate tally was 11 for Hillary and 7 for Bernie. And even Fox News was like, this is stupid.
Yeah, that's absurd. Yeah.
The Democrats have the least Democratic primary.
Yeah.
Process.
And that was the superdelegates, they were calling for Hillary before the time that they're actually supposed to. They're not supposed to throw their weight in behind a candidate until the convention.
Well, the thing is, though, they're supposed to prevent someone exactly like Bernie getting the nomination. That's why the superdelegates were created in the first place.
And
perhaps true.
I know this is a wild tangent.
No, not perhaps. It was after the McGovern lost the election because the Democratic Party abandoned McGovern and refused to support him after he got the nomination because he got the most primary votes. And then after that, they're like, oh, see, he lost. So therefore, we know better than the people, and we shall institute these superdelegates so that therefore this will never happen again.
And I know this is a wild tangent, completely off topic, but I still maintain that Bernie would have won the election.
He would have, yeah.
Oh, the general? Yeah, he would have
because a lot of Democrats say, well, if Hillary won the primary and got more votes in the primary, and she didn't win, how would Bernie win? But what they forget is Bernie polled better with Democrats. Hillary polled better with Democrats. Bernie polled better with independents. Democrats are always going to vote for the Democrat. Republicans are going to vote for the Republican. The election is decided by those independents, and they voted overwhelmingly for Bernie.
Not always. George W. Bush got more Democratic votes than Nader did in Florida.
It's a simplistic model, but it's...
Yeah, I know.
You get the idea. You can make a Democrat switch sides. I think some 10% of Democrats switch sides to Trump or something, but you get the idea. There are some people who always vote for one side, and there's some people who always vote for the other, and there's people in the middle who decide the election. And Bernie was more popular with those people in the middle.
Yeah. So, but yeah, that's... I don't know. I am not sure that Bernie can win the Democratic nomination simply because of the superdelegates. That's kind of all I'm saying.
I would like to see a lefty win it.
I would love to see it, but I honestly don't know whether or not it's actually possible because of the superdelegates.
I think it is possible now, especially after the last time that this happened. You know, everyone was up in arms about the superdelegate system because of it and everything.
So they're going to slightly shrink the superdelegate system a little bit.
Yeah, that's one thing that they're doing.
They added a bill to make sure that only Democrats could run for the Democratic nomination, something like that.
Yeah, they did.
Yeah, of course.
So you have to be registered as a Democrat.
So Bernie would have to register as a Democrat then. Yeah.
Something like that.
So that's them trying to make sure that he doesn't come in, maybe. I don't know. But
I don't think that's even necessarily specifically aimed at Bernie. I think it's aimed more at people running in primaries. Yeah. Because a lot of times in a lot of states, you have to change your registration a certain amount of time before the primary.
Yeah.
So in order for you to even be eligible to run in the primary, you probably have to have had your registration changed to Democrat for a certain amount of time.
Yeah.
So I think that's really what it's more aimed at, and everybody just immediately looked at Bernie in the presidential race, because we always look at the presidential race and ignore the local races.
Yeah.
Hi. So on that, I think we're good to wrap up. Does anyone have any final thoughts?
We kind of got a little bit away from the topic at hand, but yeah.
Yeah, we did.
But I guess, like I was saying earlier, this tariff thing is probably going to be a short-term help for him, but a long-term, it's going to bite them in the ass, I think, in the long term. Like we said originally, even Aubrey said originally, was it looks like the best way to do these things is a mixture of globalization and protectionism. You know, like there has to be a middle ground where things work the best, I think, because full-on globalization can be very, very difficult, because that could mean that our industries here could just crumble away because they could just do this stuff cheaper in other countries. And so
you've got problems such as exploitation. Like, do you really want free trade with a country that has basically slavery?
Yeah.
Yeah. Even ignoring that angle, how then do we get our income? There's not enough white collar jobs to support every American.
Yeah, that too.
Yeah, exactly.
You know, and I mean, that's something that actually is another major side effect of globalism. Yeah. You know, I mean, that's why having a mixture of it is the best, because then you still protect some of your blue collar jobs.
Almost as if you try to create, almost if the ideal system is some combination which tries to enhance the strengths of both ends.
Yes.
But
yes.
mitigate the fallbacks.
Yeah, exactly.
No, Badger. You gotta pick one ideology and go with it.
Pretty
right,
much.
I think I need some frozen yogurt.
That's not an ideology, okay?
I don't care. I have some in my freezer.
You gotta pick your frozen yogurt. You can't have vanilla mixed with chocolate. You just pick one and go with it.
Exactly.
I've got Moose Tracks in there. It is both vanilla and chocolate, and it has little Reese's peanut butter cups in it.
You cannot do that.
Caramel swirls.
Wrong.
You have to choose one, and that's it. Vanilla or nothing.
There's also strawberries and cream.
Nope.
So anyway, you can find us. Where can you find us?
There's a Facebook page. It'll be linked in the description. There's an email address you can send us comments and stuff to.
Just listen to like the last 20 minutes of last week's.
Yeah, that whole spiel and all that.
I believe we're on iTunes now.
Yeah, we're on iTunes. We're on YouTube. Yep. You can listen to our podcast on there. Yeah, there's all kinds of places. There's a Patreon page if you guys want to throw some money our way to help this project along. But other than that, guys, we really just appreciate you guys being listeners. You know, I love that we actually have people listening to our show. That's actually amazing to me, how many people we have weekly listening. It kind of blows my mind. But if you like our show, please refer us to your friends and stuff that you think might actually also be interested in listening to this. You know, like, that's how we're going to grow this thing. I'm not really good at networking and growing this thing on my own. I've really not looked too far into it. Maybe I should, but it's, I mean, thank you guys for being here every week, you know?
Yeah, if it wasn't for you guys, we'd just be 3 people talking on Discord.
Yeah, just ranting and raving at the moon.
And how stupid politics are.
Yeah, just getting angrier and angrier week by week, and just like wanting to like die
my fucking life
or something. I don't know.
And fuck you, Bethesda, for screwing up Fallout.
Gee, okay, just calm down. Jeez.
My usual caveat: if there's anything you feel strongly about, contact your representatives.
Primaries.
Do something about it.
Primary elections, guys. Primaries. Yes. Absolutely the most important elections you can get are the primaries. On
the UK side, fuck the Tories.
And from the Iowa side, fuck Steve King.
And you guys have a great week, you know? And we will see you here next week with a brand new subject.
All right.
Bye.